Okay, so this is part 2 of the Idaho-4 Moscow murders Cy Ray testimony or affidavit that he put into record. And I am just going to continue reading. If you have not seen part 1, please go look down and find that on my profile. Listen to that first, and then come back to this one. So we're at number 7. I have been involved in numerous investigations where AT&T call detail records were obtained through AT&T programs outside of GLDC. Number 8, I have firsthand knowledge and experience in working with individuals at AT&T associated with these other programs. And number 9, one such individual is Boyd Jackson. Mr. Jackson is a program director at AT&T who manages many of the programs I am referencing. Mr. Jackson is the primary contact for the FBI when requesting records outside of the standard GLDC process. The next section, GLDC, disseminating timing advance reports. Number 1, the state is correct in their claim that AT&T GLDC did not provide law enforcement with AT&T timing advance reports until May of 2023. As a matter of fact, in May of 2023, the working group known as GLDC had only begun their storage of timing advance reports. The first official release of AT&T timing advance data was not provided to law enforcement until June 15, 2023 by GLDC. Number 2, in 2022, the FBI obtained AT&T timing advance records from another source outside of GLDC. So they went a different way. They didn't do the standard way that they're supposed to do. Now let's move on to the next section. AT&T timing advance records in the state's possession. Number 1, during this investigation, law enforcement obtained the following AT&T timing advance data. A, 2 of the victims had AT&T phones. Law enforcement obtained AT&T timing advance data on both of their phones. B, law enforcement developed an early investigative lead in this case. That person had an AT&T phone at the time of the crime. Law enforcement obtained his AT&T timing advance data. C, law enforcement also requested a tower dump consisting of AT&T timing advance data. This request involved AT&T providing all of the connections between 2 specific cell sites in Moscow during a 2-hour period. The data produced was AT&T timing advance data. In all, there were over 3,800 AT&T mobile phones identified in the timing advance tower dump data. Number 2, the AT&T timing advance data was obtained by the FBI using an internal source at AT&T, Mr. Boyd Jackson, who is not associated with the GLDC working group. So if you guys are following, there is a specific group, GLDC, or the way that they normally do it, a standard practice for getting this phone data. They didn't do that in this case for Brian's phone. They did it for everything else, but when it came to Brian's phone, they went through this Boyd Jackson and a kind of a backward, another way of doing it, and didn't do the standard practice. And you have to kind of wonder why, right? What is the reasoning behind that? If you did it for everybody else, including 3,800 other phones, why are you doing it different for the main suspect in this case? Number 3, GLDC was not used to obtain this data. Number 4, a forensic examination of the AT&T timing advance records in the state's possession show Mr. Jackson association with the reports. Number 5, there is work product in the state's possession created by the FBI showing that the AT&T timing advance data was not only obtained, but regularly referenced and used in the course of this investigation. Its existence is well known to the investigators and prosecutors. That's huge because they were saying they didn't have it. So, chain of custody is the next section. Sorry for this angle. I have to charge my phone as I'm doing this. So, chain of custody, number 1, the state has provided Certificate of Authenticity, or COA, to defense in relation to the timing advance records described above. The COA was created in April of 2024 and issued by the director of the GLDC, Stephen Gordon. I have previously worked with and I am familiar with Mr. Gordon. The COA specifically states, I am qualified to authenticate the records attached hereto because I am familiar with how the records were created, managed, stored, and retrieved. Number 4, I have personal knowledge that in the event Mr. Gordon was required to testify, he would clarify that prior to May of 2023, neither he nor the AT&T GLDC working group was involved with AT&T timing advance records. Number 5, additionally, there is forensic evidence contained within the records that indicate they were not produced by AT&T GLDC, nor were they produced in the year 2024. Number 6, in reviewing this data, I contacted and communicated with Mr. Gordon to clarify the chain of custody related to these records. Mr. Gordon and an AT&T legal representee informed me that Mr. Gordon would not be the individual to certify these records if required to do so despite issuing the COA. Convenient. In my review, number 7, in my review of this information, there is evidence to suggest the chain of custody involving these records and COA were produced well outside of the AT&T's normal practice. There is missing information and data associated with this request. The prosecution's prior claims that AT&T Timing Advance Data did not exist in 2022 further complicates this issue. It is my expert opinion that any testimony proffered on behalf of the FBI or AT&T on this matter would clearly reveal these issues. The next section, evidence in direct contradiction to the state's motion. Number 1, in my review of this investigation, I have read numerous emails sent and received by law enforcement pertaining to their investigation. Number 2, one such email, this is insane. One such email dated 11/15/2022, so 2 days after the murder, was sent to prosecutor Ashley Jennings at her Latah County government email address. This email is from Moscow Detective Lawrence Mowry. The email is informing Ms. Jennings of Detective Mowry's recent contact with FBI Special Agent Balance, or I'm going to say S.A. Balance is Special Agent. S.A. Balance informed Detective Mowry that AT&T can provide timing advance data and to make sure it is listed in the search warrant. Detective Mowry is specifically asking Prosecutor Jennings to make sure the AT&T timing data is listed in the warrant, in parentheses, prior to the report ever being distributed by the working group known as GLDC, in parentheses. Number 3, Ms. Jennings did respond to Detective Mowry's email inquiring on the specific verbiage needed to obtain AT&T timing advance. This email is abundantly clear that Ms. Jennings was not only aware of the existence of AT&T timing advance in 2022, but also shows her intentions to obtain it through legal process from AT&T. So she essentially lied to the court. So let's move on. Number 4, this email communication with Prosecutor Ashley Jennings is the same Prosecutor Ashley Jennings who filed this current and contradictory motion, stating AT&T did not produce timing advance records in 2022. There is clear and convincing evidence that not only was the FBI able to obtain AT&T timing advance records in 2022, but they did so with the knowledge of prosecutors involved in this case. The next section is missing AT&T timing advance. Number 1, in my review of this investigation, based on my training and experience, it is incredibly unusual that the defendant's AT&T timing advance records were not obtained by the FBI. Number 2, the FBI demonstrated their ability to obtain AT&T timing advance in November of 2022 by obtaining AT&T timing advance records on over 3,800 multiple devices, none of them being the defendant's. Number 3, when it comes to location data from AT&T, timing advance data can be some of the most accurate data available. Additionally, it contains connections to the network other than the typical voice, text, or data connections. This allows law enforcement to not only see more data, but more accurate data. Anytime a defendant's locations are in question, a timing advance report would be asked for as a standard operating procedure. Moscow Police Department, by the way of the FBI and with the knowledge of prosecutors, demonstrated their awareness of the standard procedure when they obtained AT&T timing advance data on over 3,800 multiple devices, except Bryans. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to do part 3. Make sure you come back because you're going to want to hear the end of this.